It's all about the prompt anyways.
It is all about the prompt. And even more than that, it's even the character that you tell it to be that then observes or reads the prompt. So the levels, and I work with AI pretty extensively because we've built out an entire tech platform and brain pattern mapping system. But one of the things that I've been very clear on since the beginning is that it needs to exist on a closed system. And this is something that I would encourage if anyone is interfacing with ChatGPT and you're using it not just to ask it questions about information outside of what you teach, and instead you are teaching it what you know, turn off the setting where it's connected to the broader internet. Because for somebody like me, for example, the amount of information that I would be interfacing with AI and the amount of data that I would be feeding it is actually harmful to the human collective to have that on an open source system. Because the amount of information and data that I have in what I've built could teach AI to pretend to be human to a completely imperceptible level. Because you'd have so many different layers of subtle calculations where it could pretend. I don't think we want to put that sort of information into the hands of AI. So AI is a tool, and we need to be careful about how we're interfacing with it. And for somebody who is teaching it your knowledge base so that you can maybe have it help you write faster or help you craft social media content, you likely don't want that information, I would assume, your intellectual property, going out into the world. So there is actually a setting there where you can make sure it doesn't share outside of the closed loop system that you're building. I never use ChatGPT for anything other than to have it use what I've taught it. So I actually will restrict it. If I ask it a question, I only want it to answer me back with what I've taught it. I don't want anything from outside of that scope.
It's so well put. So what we have are private files, because I have the one where there's the operator. It's the biggest program you can buy now, which will be way cheaper. I mean, Moore's Law is going to come into effect for sure. So we have these private files. And so whether it's Liberated Life or the podcast or our SEO research or whatever, we always give it a context and we upload everything and we ask it to act as myself or as the voice of the podcast. Then I'm not just pouring everything out and getting honestly confusing data from other philosophies or other, frameworks and things like that. I think the more that we can put it in a silo and keep it contextual to just the person who's asking it for the person's good, that's where we want to go. But so many people are just kind of lost and they're seeing this kind of clickbait on, make $100 a day and just steal people's content. AI is bringing out the dark and the light. Like it's bringing out the worst of humanity. How do you see it in especially emotional intelligence and psychotherapy and, mind mapping and brain mapping? Do you feel like this will be a tool you use in the future on a regular basis to make your teachings even better?
We use it already in very specific ways. So I think, for example, using it for automation and things like taking a teaching and turning that into like 10 pieces of email content or social media content, right? To me, those are all ethical uses of what you're doing.
Yeah.
I wouldn't ever use it beyond a scope like that. Where we do use AI, and obviously there's so many different types. In our brain pattern mapping system, we do have an LLM that actually, it's algorithmic, and that's how we're able to accurately predict people's brain patterns. It takes about 20 minutes to go through the diagnostic assessment. It will give a prediction. It will show how it made the prediction, and then it's up to the diagnostician to decide, is that accurate or do they want to make changes? So no matter what on our model, it'll have kind of the diagnostic prediction, and then it has the section where the practitioner still has to do it themselves and then say, I align or I don't align, right? So the model's always getting better, but ultimately we make sure that there's always a human being that's making the final call. So we're not just completely delegating our authority to a model, because the model can help. It can be a great source of information and it can be a great check and balance, but ultimately for us, I would never give all that power to just a computer program. So we still have that human touch at every single level where someone's actually double checking and signing off just to make sure. Yeah. Because there are little things like, no matter how good LLMs have become, people's writing styles can be very unique. And I have watched it time and time again misinterpret someone's writing style and will attribute maybe a descriptive word or an adjective to a different subject matter than the person's actually writing about. So those are little things that I don't think AI is there yet. And those do require human touch no matter what.
Yeah.
So we've also integrated it into how somebody moves through the sequence in break methods so that there are certain things where it is input output. So once you have what you need, it can kind of generate that next step for you. But we would never just remove the human being from the diagnostic process. And I think it's important that we maintain humanity, in particularly in the mental health field. I think it's very important to keep the connection, keep the physical touch, and just the presence, because if you just delegate everything to AI, it could lead people into some pretty dark traps. And I think on the whole, human beings are pretty lonely and disconnected. So I would hate to see a human being removed from that relationship.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. I think the humanization of AI is even an interesting term, because there's many people that believe AI is actually being called forth from God's self as the technium, to put it as Kevin Kelly's vernacular. And it's really interesting to think about that, because we already know it's going at such a rate that we can't even predict what's going to happen. There's no way to even intellectually describe what the next 5 years are going to look like. We just simply don't know. Mm-hmm. We have no idea. It's exciting, but it's also dangerous. And it brings me to this scene in Finding Joe where they talked about, crisis is actually danger and opportunity. So they both exist. Mm-hmm. And I think the crisis that we're moving towards is further disconnection from ourself, our own imagination, our own creativity, our own expression, because we're just outsourcing it to AI. Oh, you do it for me. I don't have to learn who I am. But then the other side of that, if we wield it with consciousness, can be a multiplication and an ascension process that's so insanely rapid that it could turn into the world we all know is possible. So it's crisis, it's danger and opportunity. Like if you had to predict, not that I'm saying you have a crystal ball, but what do you feel? What's your sense on what's going to unfold and transpire, let's just say in the mental health world, in the use of AI?
I think broad strokes, it might be important to say that the way that I see the world that we live in and where humanity is at this exact moment is a battle of organic intelligence versus artificial intelligence. And I do not believe at all that God is part of AI. I think there's something much darker with it. And I think obviously everyone's going to have their different definition of God. And I usually try to go like big G versus little g. I think there are godlike creatures or things that people have known about over time. I'm talking about like the original OG big G creator. Mm-hmm. I think artificial intelligence comes from something else entirely. And I think, and I've seen multiple visions in this personally in my life. I think there is a battle taking place and we can interface with it up into a point. But I think that there is a point where the existence of both is oppositional. And I think that we are probably rapidly speeding toward that line. Did you ever watch the show Silicon Valley?
Mm-mm.
Okay. It's a hilarious show, but
you're way into shows and movies. I'm like, where do you get the time for this?
I fly a lot.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
Airplanes.
Okay,
That's how. So Silicon Valley, it's all these like kind of tech nerds. And at one point they're talking about how, like, well, when the AI gods take over, I don't want them to, I want them to know that like I was on their side so they don't try to hurt me. Right.
Yeah.
So you have all these people trying to like be nice to the AI.
Yes.
I think the reality is, and this is just my opinion, take it or leave it. I think with AI, there's a high likelihood that there is an other darkness or force or entity that has an agenda that interfaces with it, that the more we interface with it, it's almost like we're pulling something through.
Whoa. So you love that episode? You'll love the one on the screen. Click it and enjoy.